Grants and Research Services now for a little over 3 years. I'd like to welcome everybody to our presentation on getting grants, how to get paid for your ideas. I think as we're getting started though, we've got a good group of folks here. Let's go around once and just, quick introduction for everybody, who you are and what department you're from. I love starting in the back.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm from biology.
Please.
I'm a business scholar from China. I'm at the education college. Yeah, in China, we also have this kind of lecture, but our grant, most of grants from our government. So I see what's the difference.
Yep.
So,
Very good. Please.
I'm Satyam from chemistry department.
I'm Nolani Pelk from professional psychology.
Terrific. Let's go move up to the tables in the front.
I'm Franklin Williams. I'm the assistant director of the Office of Grants and Research Services.
I'm Mary Rasica. I'm faculty and director of the Institutional Review Board.
I'm Tracy Gottlieb. I'm the Vice President of Student Services and faculty member at heart.
And I'm Shannon Cassidy. I'm the director of Upward Bound.
Oh, we traded emails this morning.
Yes.
Phone calls. Yeah, that's right.
Fahim Abadrabo, Associate Director of Government Relations here.
Hi, I'm Lily Cabrera, part of the presentation team today. I'm the Senior Director for Corporate and Foundation Relations in University of Mass.
And?
Oh, Mary Balkan, English Department, Director of Faculty Development.
Danielle Polaro, Graduate Assistant, Faculty Development.
Well, thank you all, and again, welcome everybody to our presentation. And actually, this goes back to one of the first, a similar presentation, one that I heard here not long after I started 20 years ago by our grants director at the time. His was titled "How to Get an Idea and How to Get Paid for It." So this is a little bit based on that, based a little bit on that spirit. What we'd like to do a bit today, and I've given you a copy of the slides, is we're going to work together and do a little bit of a tag team, because one of the things about getting funding is that we have a lot of possibilities and a lot of possible directions that you can go in to seek funding for your work, and we'll try to do get through as much of it as we can in one short period, but hopefully to get you started. So one of the first things that we're going to do is just get you a little bit more deeply introduced. Especially to Lily and Fahim, who are my colleagues in the Ring Building. We have a little bit of a structure here at Seton Hall for folks that work on grants, both from the federal government and from foundations. And the resources are split a little bit between my office in President's Hall, where Franklin and I work, where Mary works with us on the IRB, and the University Advancement Department in the Ring Building, where Lily and Fahim work. We work together on that. On various aspects of that. So that will really be what we do first. And then actually what we're going to focus mostly on are some of the things that you can do to get started if you want to apply for a grant, because that's really what you're here for, is how do I, some of the things we can do to get moving. And then we'll talk a little bit about our resources here on campus, and then together sort of wrap up. Lily's going to give us a little bit of a workshop that she does with folks that are looking to prepare their work for corporation or foundation applications on how to take your big research idea and refine it. She's going to talk with you about some of the questions that corporations and foundations and funding agencies often will be types of things they'll be interested in, and how to get your work interesting to that. So to start that off, for some introductions, here are the critical offices involved in applying for grants. My office, the Office of Grants and Research Services, actually is the office that's responsible to the provost. And really, at the end of the day, when it comes to having an externally sponsored project, what's happening there is the university is actually committing its resources, you as the PI, your time, whatever we're committing in that project, to that sponsor that the project is going to be done. Overall, the responsible university officer for that is the provost. The Office of Grants and Research Services exists first to make sure that all the technical things that have to get done with a proposal, both before and after, get done. But also we serve as the provost's designee in terms of approvals, in terms of that being ready to go out, and especially on federal and state grants, I sign in the provost's name as the university's authorized organizational representative. That's the phrase we use. AOR for all of those grants. working together with us. So ultimately, if you're a faculty member applying for a grant, ultimately, there will be an approval through the provost's office, and we'll get into that a little bit later. The two other offices, and I'm going to introduce Lily and Fahim in just a second, and let them stand up and chat with you. Corporate and foundation relations. You'll work with Lily or me. You can work with OGRS on anything. What we'll do, and Lily and Fahim and I talk a lot. So what we'll do, if you approach them and you have a great idea, or a corporation or a foundation you want to approach, they'll contact us. Likewise, if you approach me and you want to go to Foundation X, one of the first people I'm going to call or suggest you call is talk with Lily, so that we're coordinated on those. One thing we run into, it's a bit of a challenge, if 5 different people are trying to approach Foundation X at the same time, Foundation X can get a little bit tired of hearing from 5 different people. So that way Lily and I can act as a little bit of a coordinator of those kinds of contacts. And that's on the corporate and foundation side. On the government side, I'm going to give Fahim an opportunity to stand up in a moment. Where they work, OGRS is responsible for submitting competitive federal grants. Where government relations works for us, they really help us out in terms of helping to identify potential funding sources, and also in building relationships with critical people in the federal funding process, like our congressmen, program officers, and those sorts of things. They really work on that. One other who's not here today, it's a bit more post-award. If you do get a grant, you'll get to know Brenda Dunlop in grants accounting. She's the person that handles all the accounting and all of the post-award accounting of all of our grants. If you do get a grant, there's a whole new world of fiscal responsibility that you will learn, because it's an interesting challenge in that we have university regulations and policies for handling funds, and we have the sponsors' regulations and policies for handling funds. If you get a grant, you have to deal with both of them. And that can be a bit of a challenge, but Brenda Dunlop in grants accounting is terrific for that. So I think what I'd like to do is actually step aside for a moment and introduce Lily Cabrera, who can tell you a little bit about our corporate and foundation relations office and what she does.
And do you want me to do
You can go ahead.
deep dive?
Why not? Sure.
Okay.
Why not? Go ahead. What we're going to do, I think you've got your laptop there, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to escape out of there.
So I have some copies of my presentation here, if you would like to follow. And also our fast fact sheet for the Office of Corporate and Foundation Relations. Okay, so there we go. As Nick kindly mentioned, we're in the Division of University Advancement, so we're a bit different than the Office of Grants and Research Services. We are charged essentially with managing relationships with corporate and foundation donors and prospects on behalf of the university. So that means that we really work across schools, colleges, programs, initiatives, centers, etc., to find alignment between the good work that Seton Hall, its faculty members, and administrators do and what independent grant makers are interested in. We support faculty scholarship. We create alignment between your research and foundation grant-making priorities. We generate extramural support for the university, and that includes school, college-based, programmatic, curricular, community engagement, and mission-related activities. So that's a little bit different from the scope of the Office of Grants and Research Services. And we are also responsible for soliciting and managing gifts from private foundations, organizations, trusts, corporations for student scholarships. So that's a little different as well. And I put this slide together because I thought it would be a little bit of a cute but pertinent introduction to why corporate and foundation relations. Why should you also consider applying for funding from private sources? And as you can see, is it just me or are these review panels getting a lot tougher? And actually, from what it looks like, the NIH eased up just a little bit in 2015. But you can see that the success rate for NIH funding is around the 20% mark overall. A lot of those are resubmissions. NSF is at about 23%. The NEH it ranges from 6 to 40%, but the overall average is 16%. So what does that mean for faculty members, both faculty members just starting out, and also established faculty members that are looking at doing some more risky research? You will have the potential for success with some private foundations and sometimes with corporate sources of funding, and that can be a better fit sometimes than the federal sources of funding. Not to rule out applying for federal grants, absolutely not. But something else you might want to consider after you've taken all of that hard work to put together a federal submission that perhaps you will have to resubmit, we could work together on adapting that for a foundation submission. So don't waste all of that hard work. I think it's also quite interesting to think of opportunities with foundations in particular for pilot projects and seed funding. So if you're looking at generating some research and it's not necessarily aligning quite yet with NIH or NSF, you need some preliminary findings. Sometimes foundations have RFP specific that would fit for your research agenda. Also something I'd like to look at with faculty members that are just starting out, the opportunities for fellowship funding. And ideally, you want to start considering those opportunities about, a year or so ahead of time. So really get ahead of the process. Come have a conversation. We can talk about different organizations that fund fellowships. This also applies to the social sciences and the humanities in particular. Also, as I mentioned, the opportunities that exist for high-risk, high-reward research. So whereas funders like the NIH and the NSF might be a little bit more conservative in terms of what they're willing to fund, some foundations have made it their priority to fund that high-risk, high-reward work. So if it's not yet a proven theory, if it's a little bit outside of the mainstream, there are funders out there who are actively looking to support that type of work. That will open up new pathways in research. On the corporate side, there are also opportunities for investigator-initiated research. And this is something that Nick and I would work on together. But the university does have a lot of very strong relationships with industry and also through our alumni base. And in university advancement, that is something that we leverage. We leverage our connections to prominent alumni and through connections with members of our Board of Regents, so we're able to make introductions when it makes sense. And the more we can learn about what you're doing on the research side and the potential for industrial applications, the better we can make those connections. And this is a little outside of that. It's not quite investigator-initiated research, but understanding that we also have faculty members here today from the social sciences and humanities, this can also entail corporate foundations. So those company foundations that are interested in projects that are impacting the community. So that's something that we can leverage our relationships and make introductions in that way as well. Programmatic grants. We also work with faculty members in securing funding for student initiatives and community outreach. So going into a little bit more detail about how specifically we support faculty members in our office. As I mentioned, we manage relationships on behalf of the university. So as Nick said, sometimes foundations will be hearing from multiple faculty members from one institution regarding their projects. Often that program leader, the program director, foundation leadership will give our office a call and just to make sure that we're aligned, we're on the same page. They want to see the university's highest priority that aligns with their work as something that's being put forward for support. Also on that side, I do maintain close relationships with a number of national foundations. I am responsible for setting up meetings, site visits for Dr. Esteban, different deans, administrative leadership with foundation leadership. So we try to be able to really talk about the fantastic work that's going on at Seton Hall and to create alignment between what they are looking to fund, what problems they're looking to solve, and the work going on here. Also, we disseminate RFPs quite actively based on interest areas. So we'll do this through the deans, we'll do this through program chairs and to individual faculty members themselves. We will conduct research on prospective funders and help you develop funding strategies for your programs and research. We also work with you to further refine and develop your proposal ideas. So we talk about project aims, goals, outcomes, products, communication plans, and that's something that I'll talk a little bit more about in the workshop section of today's session. So another thing that we do is convene faculty groups to promote cross-disciplinary and collaborative research, and this is quite interesting. A lot of foundations funders are looking at that interdisciplinary cross-section as a way of promoting innovative ideas, innovative research, to foster that innovative research. So something that our office does is to figure out which faculty members from one school are working in a similar area as another school and bringing groups together. For example, we're working with the College of Communication and the Arts as well as the School of Theology right now on a proposal to the Lilly Endowment, and that is a cross-school collaboration. And we have also one for the new medical school and the School of Health and Medical Science and the College of Nursing for interprofessional education and training. So that is also something of high interest to foundations. And I won't read these one by one, but just to give you a little bit more of a sense of what we do, we're a full hands-on shop, so we will draft, edit, proofread, and format concept papers, letters of inquiries, proposals, and reports for you. Reporting is essential to stewardship and essential to getting another grant from a funder, so that's something we take quite seriously. We make sure that submissions adhere to policies both on the grant maker side and the Seton Hall side. We will actually submit proposals for you, so you don't have to struggle with an online submission. We can work to get that formatted and submitted. Again, this is to private foundations. We do the gift processing and IRS tax receipting, which is incredibly important. So if a grant comes in and it's a philanthropic grant, the institution, the organization, the funding organization needs a tax receipt, so our office handles that. We also facilitate site visits and manage logistics, and again, we work closely with our partners across campus. This is included in your presentation just for you to take a look at on your own. I won't run through it, but I just thought this was interesting in terms of foundation giving for 2016. and where things are moving. Some particular interest areas that major foundations have taken on, and there's a lot of funding going to these causes. Some that have that would resonate with a higher education audience include inequality. So we're working on a grant proposal, a pre-proposal right now for the Howard Hughes Medical Institute that's all about inclusive excellence in the sciences at institutions of higher education, economic inclusion, cities, post-reform, education, philanthropy, criminal justice reform, women and girls, so taking a look at some of these sustainable development goals, there's a lot of funding behind that. Health in America, some specific disease states, dementia and diabetes in particular, climate change, and campus to career initiatives. So what next? I like this one as well because a lot of faculty members that I work with, you have, I'm here really to support you in your ideas and to help them become a reality through funding. So what's the best thing to do? Just keep calm and start writing. So everyone has to start somewhere. We're here to support you. We're here to speak with you about how to refine ideas into a proposal format. We can do some of the heavy lifting for you, but you are the idea makers, and we're here to support you in that. So thank you, and I will talk to you again about some ways to refine and articulate your ideas at the end of the presentation.
Thank you. Actually, the next person I'd like to introduce is Fahim from Government Relations. He's going to tell you a little bit about, again, sort of about how that office also supports our efforts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fahim, go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
So you heard from Lily, and Nick has introduced and said what government relations does. Everything you really need is going to be on the sheet of paper, what we do in terms of government relations. But let me start off saying, so government relations has a goal of identifying $12 million a year, applying for $5 million, and bringing in millions to the door. How do we do that? We do that in ways of meeting with faculty. We meet with our faculty across campus, across range campus, and we try to find out what our faculty are working on. Instead of trying to find out what grants are available and try to match it with the faculty, we try to match the faculty with the grant. That's only the best way to work. You know, if the shoe fits, why not? So my name is Fahim. I've been with Seawolf for 3 years now, and my background is government. I worked in Congress for 7 years and have a background as well in DC and different agencies. So me being here in government relations gives another aspect of how we do things in terms of taking faculty down to DC and meeting with different agencies. Yes, it has become harder to apply for federal grants from NSF, NEH, NIH, the Homeland Security, even the United Nations. So where do we start from? So government relations identifies and tracks funding opportunities. So for example, if Nick came to me and said, you know, whether it's a certain topic area, you know, I'm looking at something interesting, this is what I use my work, this is what I'm trying to do, I say, Nick, well, tell me a little further and let me see what we can find out for you. And we try to look in detail what we can find funding-wise. Once we've identified and once we've tracked and identified, we arrange calls with faculty because your time is very important. The ROI on your time, to me, is as equivalent value to the dollar value. Because if you're working on something and it doesn't cut out or you get rejected because we weren't on the correct path of what the agency is looking for, you waste your time, you waste your efforts, and that can direct it towards something else. So what we do is we arrange calls and meetings with different agencies, whether being on the phone, again, we're not going to travel down because you're your time unless you really want to, we're more than welcome to do so. So we meet with different agencies, we see and pitch what idea you may have, whether it's a response to a call for a proposal or it's something that you have in mind, particularly that you say, you know what, I want to see what this agency would take it. How far can I push them? How far can I pitch it to see? It's like they're like Shark Tank, right? Whether they're going to dive in or not. So we want to see if whether they'll go for it or not, or maybe they'll tell us, hey, you know what? Calm down a little bit. There's going to be a call for a proposal come up soon. We've heard something, and we'll keep our ears and eyes open. And that's where our firm that we deal with in DC called Winning Strategies plays a big role. because they aid us and help us in facilitating those calls and meetings and keeping their ears to the ground, as well as ourselves here in the Jersey office, in Seton Hall, sorry. So that happens also in two different aspects. That's also DC and the state legislature. We do the same thing, for example, with the Department of Education. We do the same thing with whether if it's there are different caucuses and different programmatic offices across state New Jersey, and we do the same thing with them. Our most recent one was a $500,000 with LaFontaine. It was almost $500,000 earlier this year, I believe it was, and that was for a brain injury. And that was, and why do I bring him up? I bring him up because he applied, he got rejected, reapplied, and he received it. So when we apply, when a faculty applies and it comes back to us, we try to find out where were the weaknesses, what were the peer reviews, how would he find out, and how would we apply. State and federal are quite different. On the federal level, it can be every year, it can be every 2 years, it can be every 3, every 4, depending on the program manager or the funding opportunity. When it comes to proposals, we have not in the past edited proposals or written proposals, but something brand new we're starting now is haven't done yet. I'm waiting for my first guinea pig. So we just began to help on writing proposals, and we're going to start doing that shortly. We'll start doing it now. So if somebody reached out to me and said, you know, I'm interested in a proposal, but I don't have the time, I will personally sit down with you. We'll figure out what we're going to write, but you also remember, I remind the faculty, I know nothing about the topic. So I am the student, you are the teacher, literally. And tell us what you're aiming for. Tell us what the meat is, what the writing is going to be about, so we can best help, the best way we can help you, obviously, and it's to your advantage. So we'll write, and we'll definitely edit, and by editing I mean, again, you are the subject matter expert, we will cut out the fat. We will trim the body down to make sure it's direct, it's to the point, and it's exactly what the agency is looking for. Again, that's after speaking to the agency, that's after meeting with the agency, knowing what path, what direction, and if your topic is on a direct point with what they're looking for. Once that happens, we submit. Once we submit, that's where our congressional partners come in, our senatorial members of Congress, or senatorial and congressional members come in. We ask for letters of inquiry and letters of support. Now, sometimes it helps, and sometimes, I don't want to say it doesn't help, but sometimes it can become stronger if we aim for the right member. Now, our member here is Congressman Payne. We will always ask a letter from him because we fall in his district. But we will also target other members and senators in the state that are either part of certain committees or certain agencies that they are pretty close with. This way, they'll have that closer connection, as well as our member here, Congressman Payne, our Senator Menendez, Senator Booker, in our state, in our federal legislature. So once that happens, we send it down. At that point, we are unable to stay in contact with the agency, because when that becomes a conflict once it's submission. When it comes all alone, and knock on wood, you get rejected, we go back to the drawing board. We take a look at it, we request a review board from our peers and see where it went wrong. What can we do better next time? And we'll go over with faculty. And obviously, we try to forward to Nick and Franklin as best as we can, and we talk to them. I mean, once the faculty has to be. So the process is this. So if I see a funding opportunity, I will not go to Franklin yet, because I need to make sure if faculty, busy as it is, I need to make sure if faculty is committed for me to say, Franklin, we have somebody. Because if I go to him and he's reviewing, he's looking at other things, and faculty that have committed already, everybody has their time and efforts that they need to focus on and hone on. So we make sure that everybody's time is valuable across the board. So, for example, if, again, Nick came to me and I said, hey, we have this funding opportunity, yeah, I'm interested. Pair them up, we'll talk about it, see how we can move forward. Now, for submission, I also try to remind faculty, so submission date is November 30th. 5 business days before that has to be to the Provost Office, to Nick Snow and to Franklin Williams. It has to ensure that A, we live in an age technology drops any day now. Internet drops any day now, computers crash any day now. So we want to make sure that everything's smooth sailing when it's submitted. 5 days prior going to Franklin and the Provost Office, that we as government relations receive your work, your proposal, your final piece that you already submit, so we can make sure that we go through it one last time with a fine comb to make sure that, we've done the best we can per what we've worked on. I understand that at times, they give you a quick turnaround. They don't give you enough time to really do the work. So what we try to do is, and again, from what you take today, and you say, Fahim, there's something I want to talk to. On the bottom here is my contact information. I'm not going to hand you business cards. I figured it's better to put it on here for you because everything you need, like I said, on the sheet of paper. You reach out to me and you say, Fahim, there's something I'm interested in. We'll talk. You tell me what you're interested in, what your topics are on. Winning Strategy and myself, we work very closely. We fall under, they have as much interest as I do and as you do, as the university does, because again, it's a hired firm that partners up with us, partners up with the university. So they have as much stake as we do. So we'll work together, work with the faculty, try to find out, put a call together, and if there is something of a lead that we're either we want to pitch to the agency or that we know of, we'll make that connection. What are federal agencies really putting on? Or what are they looking at? Looking at diversity. There's a lot of diversity out there. Diversity training, diversity workforce in the training areas. STEM, particularly STEM. Now that we're coming to a new election in less than 30 days, the government doesn't really know which direction that their funding and their budgets are going to go. So we'll probably have a better idea towards the end, if not definitely in the beginning of the next start, 2017, January, February. It's unfortunate that the fiscal year falls in between that, but we try to push for as much as we can to find out what's going on now. So if there is something you may be interested in, I do recommend that at the early stage, which is tomorrow, the day after, Monday, give me a call, email me, tell me what you're really interested in, what you're looking at, what your project work is, so this way we can get on the ball and find out what monies are left. So this way we can get it before the election, or we can apply before the election, or try to find out when deadlines are. That's pretty much the gist of what we do as government relations. Are we taking Q's and A's now or later?
We can go as we go.
Okay. Maybe have any questions? I know you said you guys did it differently in, remind me what country? China? Okay, so I just wanted to know if it was something similar or if it's something different, if you had any questions, if anybody else has any questions. I'm more than happy to ask or answer it as best as possible. And other than that,
But when you
yes,
say
ma'am.
you aim for $1 million in funding a year?
So that's our departmental goal. Our departmental goal is that we aim for, and this is obviously public information. We aim for identifying $12 million of federal funding, federal and state. And actually, there's one thing I didn't, like you mentioned, there's one thing actually I didn't touch upon, which I will right now. So $12 million is what we identify. We apply for faculty for $4 million. $4 million, yes. And then we bring in through the door $1 million a year.
Okay, so when you say that, do you count, for example, our grant?
What's our grant?
The Upward Bound grant?
Well, that's, thank you actually for clarifying. That's if government relations has helped.
So it's only stuff that your fingerprints are on?
Correct. We don't take credit for anything unless we actually help with it in any way. Because obviously what's right is right, transparency is what it is. Okay,
so we've never asked for your help before, but we're in the grant cycle right now. And it's a federal grant, so you would be available to assist us.
Of course. Of course. So and thank you, Mr. Nagali, she made a good point. There are many faculty members who actually don't know who we are as government relations, what we do, what's our team. This is why we sit with different faculty members, different deans, and different bodies, and different body of faculty, such as today. So, before I came on, we really didn't have much of a handle on our faculty. Really wasn't really aware of what government relations does. But sitting with different, Lily and I, we talk to faculty, different deans, and she does a great job, and we try to do a great job in staying in touch with faculty as much as possible. We try to let them know what government relations does, what we're able, what we're capable. And this is why I put together this one-page, quick, fast fact sheet. And to help you as best as we can. Yes, it is becoming harder, or it's been harder, but now it's becoming harder to apply for federal grants. And the one thing, never also become discouraged. If you do not get it the first time, there's a high rate of first-time people who apply for proposals get rejected. That's because they don't know what to expect, and they learn that. But that's why I also make sure, and I put an emphasis on, reach out to us, reach out to government relations, because we don't want you to be one of those high-end statistics. We want to help you as best we can to make sure we go through the proper channels, so you do come out successful in a proposal that you want to see. So thank you, that's a good question. And another also aspect government relations helps in, and I'll make it quick, and I'm going to keep going, is contracts. Contracts is another way also we deal with. It's, contracts from NSF, NIH, NEH always need a partner with businesses. And as well as OGRS can attest to how hard it is, but it's another avenue of funding. And if you guys have any questions on that and how we can answer, I'm more than happy to help you. Nick Snow is very well versed in that area as well, and so is Franklin. So other than that, no other questions, I will turn it back to Nick.
Ian, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, just a little bit of a side. One other thing that I'll tell you a little bit about self-serving. Tell you a little bit about Nick Snow. I've been here a little more than 20 years. As I mentioned, I'm also in my day job. I'm a senior full professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. I've had external funding for almost that entire 20 years through both federal and private sources. And a little story about that. My first proposal here, I got $5,000 worth of in-kind computer software my first year here. Got a small $10,000 grant that was done with Merck together with our corporate and foundation relations office at the time. A dozen years later, Lily and I worked together on $500,000 from Sanofi Aventis that came in from my work. So that's also a little bit about how when Fahim talks about keeping and getting going in there, a little one, that's really where you lead to the big ones. And also I've done quite a bit of federal work and contracts and all of those sorts of things. And that's why part of why we have multiple offices to help us with these things. A couple of things again. At the end of the day, though, when it comes to getting done, Lily, Fahim, and I kind of work as a team to get you to the submission stage. At the end of the day, it's the provost that really assumes responsibility that when we send a proposal out to an agency or to a sponsor, that the work that we're promising is going to actually get done, what we're promising for that. And so that's why you'll see almost all the time, in almost all of them, whatever type you're going to get involved in, it's very likely that OGRS is going to be involved as the provost designee. Also, we'll get more heavily involved when it comes time to prepare things like budgets, especially if there's anything complex in the budget, like release time, most personnel things in general, and if the budget is much more than here's $10,000 to do whatever you want, OGRS will get very heavily involved in that budget preparation because we have to make sure that the budget both follows the sponsor and the university policies. You as the principal investigator, your main responsibilities in terms of grants, besides writing your proposals, is then being responsible when you propose the work if you get funded for doing it. And for completing your report, you'll also have to follow whatever regulations are in that grant agreement and contract. And one of the tough things, federal's not so bad actually for that because they have a lot of rules, but they're all pretty consistent with each other. Especially now under uniform guidance, the federal agencies have all been forced to be more consistent with each other in terms of their rules, and grants accounting helps us with that. Corporations and foundations can be all over the place with their rules, and they're all different. They're all, that's going to be foundation and company to company. The other thing that you'll have to do if you get a grant, of course, is follow all the university's policies as well, and that can sometimes be a challenge. But let's say, now where are we at? So, you've got your ideas, and I know we all have research ideas and you want to get them funded. Let's think a little bit about some of the steps that we'll do to do that, and I apologize for some of the smaller print here. I think one of the first steps, and Lily's going to work with you a little bit on this in a few minutes, a lot of it's about articulating your idea. It's one of the things that, and I really appreciate the advice from Lily and Fahim about, once we get that big idea written down and we apply to one place, hey, we can apply to multiple places with it. We don't have to just use it once and then move on to another idea.
Please do.
Yeah?
Please do.
Please do, yes. The other thing too is to, once we've got some ideas, and I like the approach here, is we get out there and do a little bit of legwork, and it's a little bit, if you ever thought about what it was going to be like to start a small business, that's actually how I think of my own research group. It's a little bit like a small business that I run. I've got graduate students to support. We have equipment that we need to some purchase and then keep running. We've got lab supplies that we need. It's a little bit like a small business. It costs, my expenses for my research lab run between $50,000 and $100,000 a year. So it's like I've got to keep working to keep that business going. And so it's a little bit, when you think about having keeping your research funded, it's a little bit like having a small business that happens to operate within the university. It's a good way to think about it. So, get some ideas, get your ideas together, seek those matches. That's where you work with us on, once we got that articulated, finding those matches. And then when we get to those matches, this is where especially I think Lily and Fahim are terrific with this in terms of helping us get contacts with that agency, with those sponsors. Neither of them, they are both, part of their job is to not be shy about calling up program managers and asking questions. Because that's also a skill that you'll get as you do more of this as a faculty member, as well as how to reach out to a program manager. It's scary as hell the first time you call a program manager. But then you find out the program managers, that it's a funny thing about it, program managers, their job is to disperse the money. And literally their job, the job of a program manager at a foundation, a corporation, or at the government, is to spend that money they have in their budget. So they want to hear from potential investigators about their ideas as well. And that's one of the crucial steps, I think, in all of this. So we've got an idea, we've talked about it a little bit here. Let's call up that program manager and talk about it with them. Because that's also where you might find out that, even though we think the idea fits with them, it turns out it really doesn't. And then you end up not wasting your time on that program, or they can direct you to another place where it does fit, or they tell you, hey, this is interesting, and then you can start talking with them about how, all right, how can you help me? You'll of course work pretty closely with us to prepare your proposal, and we'll get into that a little bit. There are some internal approvals. Because the provost signs off, as the person, the office ultimately responsible, whenever we do a grant proposal as a faculty member, you have to get the approval of everybody between you and the provost. So your department chair has to approve, the dean has to approve as well, and then there are a few other approvals we'll get into if those are necessary. But that's also to ensure, again, that when the university submits a proposal, that everybody's on the same page. And this is important. It's actually important about the approvals, because we've had this happen. This happened, I was associate provost for a couple of years, and while I was in the provost's office, this happened, where we had to actually decline. The university declined a very prestigious fellowship. Very, very prestigious fellowship for one of our faculty members. Because the provost found out about the faculty member was going to be away for the fall semester. The provost finds out about this in August. And the department chair, finds out about this in August. So the teaching schedule is written, and the guy comes in August and says, oh, sorry, I can't teach this semester. Well, the university said, no, you'll teach this semester, and they sent back the fellowship. Those are the things that we have to avoid happening. So we want to be sure that we get those. The other thing is that a lot of the time in those approvals, they'll agree to things. Well, sometimes they will. They might agree to some release time, or you might discuss release time or something to work on the project. We write all of that down, we get it signed off, so that again, if that comes, boom, we have it signed off, you get the release time. If it's not signed off, you're likely to not get the release time. So we make sure that all of those things that the university might be contributing to this project to help you with your project are also all signed off. So approvals are forward. And then of course, the submission happens. Fahim gave us a nice description, and that's also, again, I'll reiterate and echo that with him. When we do submit proposals, we get the feedback back. I know I've been rejected lots of times, and sometimes nasty. Yeah, sometimes reviewers in chemistry are harsh. They're harsh to the point of being nasty. What was it? I got one of them back that said, well, if the agency has the money to spend, you might fund this guy, which they never do, but even with flippant remarks like that. Stuff like that, so we get them back, but you get that feedback. It's a little bit like, it's a lot like publishing. If you've ever written an article or written a paper, gotten the reviews back and it says major revisions? Or something like that, or it says reject and there's pages and pages of stuff to do. It's just like that. And even if it says reject, you've got those pages of reviews, you send it back in after answering the reviews and they take it. Proposals are exactly the same way. Almost always, there's going to be a lot, quite a bit of rejection involved. Don't worry about it. I think what does happen is we all take it personally when we see reject checked off on the form. But try not to. Just get in there, respond to the reviewers as best we can, and we kind of repeat the process. This is one of my points. It really is a long term. It is competitive. Everybody else is out there applying for them too. It's a long-term process. And I think about it, I think back to my first couple of thousand that I got almost over 20 years ago, and now, much more. It was quite a bit of a road, and that's the thing about it. Once you follow that path, good things happen. So articulating ideas, and I think this is one of the places we'll work on this a little bit more, but one of the things you want to think about, and Lily's going to talk about this toward the end, but one of the things you don't always have a lot of in articulating your ideas is space. Especially corporations and foundations. They like short, hard-hitting proposals. That $500,000 we got from Santa Fe Aventis, that was what, a 3-pager? Yeah, it was a 3-page proposal.
A lot in it.
Yeah, I mean, it was dense in the writing, but it was a 3-page proposal. But you've got to, and so we had to articulate some things very, very quickly. But when you think about it, even something big like an NSF proposal, you're going to describe a 4 to 5 year project. You've got 15 pages to do it in. And that's just not a lot of room. As a reviewer, you'd see the amazing things I see sometimes. They will do everything that they can with the font and the margin and all of this stuff to squeeze what they can into that 15 pages. I'll tell you as a reviewer, I barf on that. Those are the ones that I look at and I'm almost as nasty as I can because it's obvious that, put it in a 12-point font I can read. If you can do that, then you actually understand what it is you're talking about. And you've done a good project. But actually, that's one thing. You don't have a lot of room there. NSF, typically federal proposals, for instance, they're always reviewed by experts. Or supposed experts. At least I'm pretty sure that if I send it to Division of Chemistry, another chemist will read it. They may not be an expert in the particular chemistry that I do, so that then influences the writing a little bit. Our own University Research Council, on the other hand, the narrative portion, if I remembered correctly, is like 3 or 4 pages. And that's not reviewed by experts. In fact, we almost set the system up to guarantee that it's not read by experts. So you'll write that in a very different way than the proposal you're going to write for experts in your field. Because you'll have to much more accessible language. The other reason I think you want to think about really articulating your research concisely, and this is also just a small internal benefit, doesn't have much to do with getting a grant. Every now and then you might run into the provost or the president or the vice president for student affairs or another one of these university big shots on the green. Hey, how you doing? What are you up to? That's one of those business situation opportunities for your elevator conversation. If you've got that 30 seconds about what your research is. Hey, gas chromatography is going really well for me today. That sort of thing. You never know. That can be helpful down the road. You never know where you might meet somebody on the green that actually has some money for you. Seeking matches, work with us. That's again can be the challenge. Do some of your searching. Actually, I've got a handout. Where did I put that database handout? I have a handout here somewhere that Sebastian brought me from the library. Where did I put that? I might have passed it out. There's a pivot database handout that I might have, did I pass it out or not, or I left it somewhere. Somewhere in this room there's a handout on a database called Pivot. I'm not sure where I put it. Oh, here they are. And Pivot is a grants database, and I'm going to suggest that everybody, for some homework tonight, what you can do is go to the library website. The link is on here, or you can just go into the library's databases and sign up for Pivot. What Pivot is it's a database. It's a huge database. What does it say here? $44 billion in funding opportunities database. What Pivot will do when I signed up for it is it was able to pull automatically some of my publications in off the internet, so it created a profile for me. And then what it does is, if I go into my Pivot account, I can look up all these grant opportunities that it's matched me with based on my publication record. Or the other thing it does, it sends me emails either once a week or when a new opportunity pops up in the database, I get an alert email about it. A lot of them are stuff I'm never going to apply for, but I look at it this way, it's not much of an effort. If one or two of those even a year pops up that are worthwhile to me, that are worth applying for or looking at further, that's not so bad. That's a good place to go. It's actually, in some ways, it's a lot easier to search for these things today than it was when I was starting out. We didn't have the internet to search. So you searched publications and mailings and manuals and books and things like that to try to find things. Grants.gov, of course, is also searchable. Again, one of the things as you're articulating your ideas, come up with those keywords or even key phrases that you can type into search engines. And type in keywords about your research. Eastern European literature funding opportunities. Google that, and you'll be surprised actually at what you see to get started with. We're going to be, Franklin and I are working, I should give Franklin a better introduction than I've given him so far. Franklin Williams is our Associate Director in Grants and Research Services. What Franklin will do is he's extremely helpful in making sure that all of our proposals are done right. Because that's what he's very, very skillful, because what you'll find when you get into this, especially with the federal government, there's a lot of nuance in how those documents have to be completed and all of that. And Franklin's a wizard in making sure all of the systems work right for us and making sure all of that actually happens for us. And also in terms of the regulations, getting budgets right and making sure all of those things are done correctly. Other things you do, talk with colleagues. Actually, I don't think I'm talking too out of turn today, but I've had some interesting ones. Talk with colleagues who've been successful. You all have them. Everybody has them. One of the things I've really enjoyed about being in the grants and research business even, I've learned a lot from talking with my fellow grants officers, especially when I tell them I'm new and I'm interim. I still tell them that. And they almost bend over backwards to help you. And I think you'll find your colleagues who do know how to do these things, they're so proud of having gotten a grant. I don't think they're too likely to share their proposal with you, but they certainly talk with people. Ask someone who knows is probably the best way. Calling the program officer, again, you think you have an idea, you think you have a federal agency, or I think if I'm going with a corporation or foundation, I'm calling Lily. If I think I have an idea, it seems like it's going to match this program that AT&T is advertising, I'm going to call Lily first. Federal on on this side, federal program officers actually at places like NIH, NSF, and them, they don't mind strange calls from PIs out of the blue that much. They're pretty cool. They're pretty cool about it. They expect it, but definitely call the program officer. That's also probably when you're at that stage, though. It is a good idea. Not a bad time to get Fahim in the loop, just to be, and us in the loop, just to be sure that we're. Again, if we've got 3 people calling the same program officer, we might coordinate. Then we know that maybe we'll coordinate a visit instead, something like that. If we've got looking at the same program. Of course, actually before you even do that, get the RFP, get the announcements, read up on it. When you do call program officers, it's good when you approach them. It's a little bit like students approaching you. It's much more fun when the student comes to you with a question and they've done their homework, or at least they've attempted to do their homework. So if you do call a program officer, certainly have read the RFP and said, hey, I think this is how my idea fits with the RFP, and demonstrate that you've read the RFP and done your homework. It's a good way to approach that. Also a good time to give your chair and your dean a heads up that you're working on this. If for no other reason than proposal writing is a challenge, it will gobble up all of your time, and your chair and your dean might wonder where you are. So it's a good time to give them a heads up this is coming, especially if it's a program, if you see phrases in the RFP about things like cost sharing, institutional commitment, institutional investment, that sort of thing, where it looks like Seton Hall has to contribute something significant to this project, get your chair and dean involved right away. As soon as you see those keywords, talk to your chair. Talk with your dean, because ultimately they're going to have to make the case for those resources to the provost. And get that. And then, of course, as I put at the top and the bottom of this, talk with us, talk with me, talk with Fahim, talk with Lily as appropriate. because we're very happy to help you get matches. Preparing proposals, lots of fine print here. I kind of like the small print on the slide because that's kind of what preparing a proposal is like. There's lots of, almost always, especially with federal, lots of forms with lots of small print to fill out. But these are the basic things that you're almost always going to see in almost everything, in almost all proposals. You'll see this even in our own University Research Council, which I encourage all of you to take a look at the University Research Council webpage. The provost has put a lot of money into the University Research Council the last couple of years. The annual competition, the grants are now 10,000. So they're a lot higher than they were 2 years ago. They were up to 6,000. So the provost has invested quite a bit of, not a bad place to get started. If you want to sort of dip your toes into proposal writing, our internal competition is also not a bad place to go. Almost all proposals have a project summary or abstract of some kind, usually pretty short. For NSF, it's 1 page. The narrative is where you're really going to get to your, get to what you're talking about, that section. And again, most of the time, concise, concise, concise. That's going to be one of the hardest challenges, where I'm so glad that government relations and corporate foundation are stepping up to help with proposal writing, because that's one of the hardest challenges, is taking your great big ideas and fitting them into a space this big, and still having it make sense to an outside reader, and sometimes a skeptical outside reader. And that's a real challenge in writing. They all have a budget. Again, depending on the agency, that budget will require a lot of detail or a little bit of detail. But when you're thinking about that, what you want to think about is, all right, I'm going to do this thing. What does it cost to do this? How much time do I spend on it? Do I need to bring in other resources? Do I have to buy equipment? Will I have to travel? Will I have to, and human subjects, might the human subjects be compensated? That sort of thing. And those are all the kinds of things that we'll bring into budgeting. What does the agency say that we can do or cannot do? A lot of them put restrictions on what you're allowed to spend or what you're not allowed to spend. That's really where, especially Franklin and I come in. We do a deep dive on every budget to be sure that all of those things are lined up right, both with what the agency wants and with what the university will let us do. Then there are all kinds of other documents that often, these are some of the things that I just tend to have ready all the time so that I can crank out a proposal quickly, I can focus on my writing and not have to worry too much about these. These are some things that I would keep handy at all times. I keep my CV. Actually, I've got several of them that I keep, actually. I keep one that's sort of my big, thick, 40-page academic one that has everything in it. I keep another one for potential administrative opportunities. I keep another one that's in the format for NSF. I keep another one that's in the format for NIH, updated all the time. That way, when the time comes to get a proposal or a colleague wants me to be on their team, I don't have to mess around. I can just send it to them. I keep those. I keep a list of my current and pending support all the time. Let's say you've applied for 3 grants. One of the things you almost always have to do is tell everybody else what else you've applied for. And keep everybody in the loop on what you've applied for. So if I already have an NSF grant, then I apply for another one, I have to disclose the grant that I have. Because what they'll look for is, am I trying to do any double dipping or something like that, get paid twice for the same project, which the government absolutely hates. Corporations, foundations, there are ways to be a little more subtle with that, but the government absolutely does not want you getting paid twice for the same project. So you have to be careful there. So that's something else. Again, if you're going to do things like I do and order instrumentation or big capital equipment, things that cost 5, 10, 20, 50, we're working on major research instrumentation that might be $500,000. You have to have the quotes often, according to, you have to do competitive bidding for that. So quotes for that, those are things. Certifications, if you're working with animals or human subjects, here's our human subjects mention, and I have a very short mention on human subjects. I'm going to introduce Dr. Mary Rizika again, who's the director of our Institutional Research Board for Human Subjects. There are certain types of research that you have to get permission to do. And two of the major ones involve vertebrate animals. So if you're working with fish, fish, rats, mice, all of those sorts of things, those count as those are vertebrate animals. We have a board for that called the IACUC is the board for that. Mike Figueredo is in charge of that. If you're doing human subjects, and that can be as simple as sending out a survey. Surveying 10 people in the room here, for a research project that you intend to publish. If you're thinking about anything like that, contact Dr. Rizika and talk about your project with her. She will then help you make the determination with you is, does this require approval of the IRB or not? She's got a procedure for that. We've got a very detailed process for that. So if you're thinking about doing things that involve doing things to humans, even as simple as asking them questions, get in touch with Mary and she'll help you out there, because that's something we have to be very, very careful about, humans and animals. That we do those according to our agreements. We have an assurance agreement with the federal government that we're going to follow all of the applicable laws with humans and animals. So if you think, please, go ahead, please.
I want to reinforce what Nick just said about how serious it is. If an institute, you probably read about this in the newspapers, some of the big boys have had this happen to them. If we violate, if a researcher at Seton Hall, whether it's administrator, faculty, student, violates the ethical guidelines, the feds come in, shut down all research and stop all federal funding. Happened to Hopkins, Carnegie Mellon, UCLA, a lot of big prestigious places. So the penalties are very severe, and that's why people think the IRB is tough. It is. Okay? We're not risking the university for, yeah. So, but I'll help you with it. But the penalties are severe. And the other thing is, because of ethics, the human person is very sacred, and we value them, and we don't permit anything that would hurt a human person to go through. Seton Hall. I guess the other places do.
And it's interesting. So one of the things that we also, not a lot for us to touch upon today, but it also opens a little bit of a door that one of the functions that we also manage through OGRS is we kind of touched on a little bit, is in a lot of these areas, human subjects, animal subjects. Thank God grants accounting takes care of it for us on that end, but we call it research compliance, and that's one of the things that we have to comply with all of the regulations. That's part of it. That's a lot of what Franklin and I manage it as well. Other things, of course, Fahim touched on letters of support for a grant. That's again part of the conversation with us. If we're applying to NSF, do we bring in the big guns on Capitol Hill, and how do we do it? And that's one of the things, one of the functions that Fahim and his office really take care of us for. Or, for something more simple, an agency might require a letter of support from the provost. A lot of career development type grants require, some letter of support from a high office at the university, for instance. And that's again the kind of thing that we want. A couple of other things just to be aware of. If you're thinking about doing something that requires a subcontractor, let's say you're working with a colleague at Ohio State, and you're going to get the grant, and you're going to pay your colleague at Ohio State to do some lab work, because they've got a special instrument that you don't have. Okay, that's called a sub-award, and there's an additional layer of process. We have to do a separate contract between us and the potential sub-awardee that goes into the proposal. And there's a process for that as well. And then finally, another one, just a small part of another one that's that we've opened up a little bit more right now on federal, but it's going to extend everywhere. One thing that especially the federal government has gotten big on these days is conflict of interests. So if you do a federal grant application from now on, one of the first things that Franklin's going to send you on my behalf is a new conflict of interest form that we've developed that you have to fill out and declare that you have. Well, actually declare any potential conflict of interest that you might have, so those can be resolved and known before we submit that. Because that's, again, just the way the government has gone, more and more regulation. Point, there's just a lot of things to do, even, it's funny, you send in an NSF proposal, it's a 15-page narrative, and there's about 50 pages of backup documentation, typically. It's amazing, but that's what they are. A few hints. Allow time. That's probably the big one. One of the things that we're not as good as we could be here. And I heard this from a senior grants officer in the country. It's almost if you wait for the RFP, you're already too late. And that can be a bit of the hard part about it, a little bit of the competition. So that's why we also think about allow time, especially if it's an annual type program. Okay, it's October right now. Let's say you see an RFP for an annual program that's due in January. You think you have plenty of time. All right, we can get something together by January. But more than likely, your competitive one's going to be next January. But we can try to get something together, but you're scrambling if you get the RFP now. And that's actually one of the things also to try to keep an eye on in your own discipline, or their natural, some of those timelines. Proofread, proofread, proofread again. Get as many people as you can to read this with a skeptical eye. I can't tell you how many proposals I've seen as a reviewer where, quite frankly, the grammar's just bad. And if it doesn't detract from the science, it may not be that big a penalty, but it's a turnoff. And one thing you don't want to do is turn off the reviewers if it's hard for them to read. So proofread, proofread. Get some good writers like Fahim, Lily, in their offices. Get some of them. This is where they can be really helpful to us, because that's something that we, especially we scientists, they're just not the greatest. I might be able to make sure that I have a subject and a verb in all my sentences, but to most people, the writing's going to be really, really awful to read, even most scientists.
Can I catch the one thing?
Please.
So one thing I've learned is that if you're writing a grant, look at the proposal, what kind of words they use. You want to use similar words that they use. This way, you can relate to what you can relate to how they word certain things, how they use words, what kind of words, the big words, small words. It plays a factor. That's something I've learned. If I'm wrong, tell me.
Please, no, this is, yeah. Actually, it's one of the things.
It's important.
Yeah, not verbatim, but if you can work those, if you can work the keywords from their themes into things like your project summary, and then get right to the point. And that's probably one of the other big points with that, is get right to the point. You almost have to. It was described to me once. You almost hit them over the head about 3 times with how you're answering their RFP, with how you're answering what they want answered. Boom, boom, boom. You hit them over the head with it. Don't try to be subtle and flowery about it. That's actually is one point where you want to be really boring. This proposal responds to you this way, something like that. The other thing about it is follow the guidelines exactly. We've run into this on a number of occasions, especially the federal government is just getting ridiculously picky about everything. This is where I come back to allowing time and those sorts of things. A lot, but not all, of the federal submission systems will kick it back with errors if the government's computer doesn't like the proposal. A lot, but not all. That's okay if you have time to resubmit, because the thing about deadlines, especially federal, is that they are drop deadlines. If that thing's not perfect by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the due date, you're dead. Even if it comes back even if you've already submitted and it came back with an error message, you're still probably dead. That's why we say, part of why we ask for that 5 days to a week in advance. That way we can submit it in advance. And when it kicks back error message, because it almost always does, we have time to fix whatever it is. So that's one of the things that's especially challenging with today's electronic systems, is those computers are amazingly efficient at picking out errors. They don't need to have that judgment anymore, and that's what they will do, and we want to hope to do that. So again, this has come on. Again, Lily and Fahim, their offices will assist in a great way if given the time to do it. One thing I don't like doing as the grants officer is trying to, in fact, if you send me your proposal and ask me to read it, actually read the narrative, and it's due tomorrow, forget it. I'm not reading it. I don't have time to do that. One thing I don't like doing is clicking submit if it's due at 5 o'clock, and I have done this before. I don't like clicking submit at 4:45. There are all kinds of other people clicking submit at 4:45, and it doesn't go through. And again, if the system's jammed up, they don't care.
I've seen systems crash on the foundation side.
Yeah. Yeah, so we like to get them in a little ahead of. So that's one of the things, just in your thinking, probably the best thing about proposal writing. Same things, don't we tell our students the same thing? Exactly the same thing we tell our students about writing a paper for us. I think this is why we're telling them.
And if you're really rushing to get something in, you got a better shot in your mind to tell yourself that it's going to get rejected and accepted. Because people who actually have, and if I'm wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, but people who usually actually get a grant accepted have months in advance. That's why I said that if you have something you're working on, let us know, so this way we can get you ahead of the ball, ahead of the game, should I say, before you fall into that trap of trying to rush things and then your heart gets broken.
So I'm going to make a few more quick comments because I also wanted to give Lily some time. We've done really well with so far, but I want to finish up on time and give Lily a little bit of time for her workshop portion. Internal approvals, again, one of the things also do allow time for your chair and your dean to approve the proposal before it comes to the grants office, because that's, again, for lots of reasons, we want to be sure that when we submit a proposal, that you, the PI, your department chair, and your dean are all on board, they've all agreed to everything that's in there, because that proposal is going to be, if it's funded, it's a significant impact on your time. It's a significant impact potentially on university resources that we want to be careful about. So we have a form for that, a cover sheet for that, and again, we need, we do our best to get it to get that package into the grants office. Probably the biggest key, same thing with students, plan ahead. In terms of submissions, we do that. So that's again one of the things we submit by. There are a few times with some online things where we might instruct you to go ahead and do it, but that's can only be really is only done with our permission. And almost all of them these days are electronic. Back when I started, literally every now and then, literally they would drive the proposal to Washington. Back when I started, because there would be 20 paper copies, and if due today, all right, drive it on down there and hand it in over the front desk of NSF. That was done. We don't have to do that anymore. But it also means you better get it in on, the electronic system shuts down at that day and time.
On the foundation side,
Yeah.
some still have
Yeah.
hard copy submissions
Yes.
with all of the attachments.
There are a few, yes.
And I am more than happy to help you with that. So if you're sending just your copy of your proposal, your CV, and I can take care of the rest and get it submitted for you, I'm happy to do that.
So fairly quick, if you get the good news, we get the good news back and the grant is funded, the university will typically, again, we submitted it very often, most often, the university, the official office gets notified. You will probably be notified as well as the PI. Sometimes you as the PI are notified and they don't notify us, but please notify us. Sometimes agencies do change your scope of your project and the budget. They're allowed to do that. It's their money. There may be some additional contracts to sign, so be looking out for that. A lot of the agencies will send, you've approved for funding, here's a contract. Fill this out and sign it. And you have to do that in order to get the money. What will happen then once that is done is that our grants accounting office will forward that over to grants accounting, and they'll set up a fund code for you. And then the grant will be assigned that, and then that's what you'll bill all of the expenses for that grant against that fund code. You'll also get various training, and if it's your first time, you'll get various training that's involved with doing that.
I just want to add to that for just a quick second.
Yeah.
If you do get a contract, it will be a contract, a grant or gift agreement from a foundation or a corporation, please route that to me in our office, because there might be a line for a PI to sign, but ultimately it should be the authorized institutional representative signing. So on the gift side, that would be Dave Bohan as Vice President of University Advancement, or me as Senior Director for Corporate Foundation Relations, because PIs can't obligate the university to the terms in a gift agreement.
And this is, of course, if we get the good news.
Yes.
And then remember when you get those, is they will also probably remind you of your requirements to submit reports. And almost all sponsored research requires reports back to the agency. And again, depending on what the agency is, they will have different requirements for that. You, as the PI, are responsible for technical reports. Grants accounting, when they set up their accounting, also they take care of financial reports automatically. You really don't have to worry too much about that. They take care of, they'll take care of things on the financial side. That's if we get funded.
On the foundation side, I also do remind faculty members about upcoming deadlines. I assist with report preparation, and I also coordinate with grants accounting to make sure that the spending is in line with the categories as included in the gift agreement, and that if there are any complications or delays or setbacks, challenges, that we're effectively communicating that back to the funder and maintaining a positive relationship.
So again, you can let us help you with those things too. If your grant's not funded, which is probably, again, first time out, by far the most likely occurrence, I think as we talked about, get the reviews if they're available. Sometimes they don't send them automatically. Call up the program manager if you didn't get reviews and ask for them. They may just tell you, sorry, we don't give out reviews, which a lot of foundations and corporations don't, and then you're kind of out of luck there. But federal agencies especially, very transparent these days, much more transparent than they used to be. You actually get a lot more detail than we used to. Get those reviews. This is again where that, having built that relationship with the program officer helps. If it's somebody that you talk to in your proposal preparation, then you don't get funded. You can at least have that phone call, and even if they can't send you reviews, there's a good chance that they can give you some kind of hints as to what was good, bad, or indifferent about the proposal that caused it not to get funded. So that's again where that having that relationship that you built with the program officer can help. And it really helps in this next stage. Because one thing program managers really love is to see somebody come back that's taken their advice. Just like everybody else. We love it when our advice is followed. All of us, program managers are exactly the same. They want to see that you've, when you come back and you apply again, that your proposal pretty clearly, and you'll have to work the relationship a little bit to know how much you hit them over the head with how you followed their advice, but they want to see a better proposal the next time. That's really what they're, a lot of what their goal is, especially with first-time applicants, is to get you up to, is to help you get to be competitive. Especially if you're doing research that has piqued their interest, and a lot of the time that's why you have that conversation about it. Again, you almost never get funded the first time. But building that, just like in a business, building that relationship. A few quick comments on internal support. We've got a few things that can help you here as well in terms of funding. University Research Council, look for the RFP in November. You'll have a nice, if you want to apply for URC, it's a great thing to work on over Christmas break, because the proposals will be due in January. Our University Assessment Center and various offices, I think that's who's running the CDIs these days. That's another one, again, for some funding toward teaching. The Provost also has a release time program. Look out for an email every semester about that, where you can put in for release time to help you do things like write a proposal, to help you do things like write a paper and get a paper out of your proposal. And the other thing in terms of research support, I think it's always good to be just talking with your chair and your dean about what you're doing in research. Try to get them to tell you how they can help you with it, because they want, I think all of our chairs and deans really want to help you with your research in your own area in whatever ways they can. They're often limited, but they can do that. I'm going to turn the floor back over to Lily for a few more minutes at least. She's got one more part. And there is a workshop promised, at least for briefly, on refining ideas. Lily, please.
So this is your lightning round. Ultimately. I'm passing out just a quick one-pager front and back that includes some guided questions for concept paper development and proposal planning. So whenever I meet with a faculty member, and we have an initial conversation about their research or programmatic work, I will ask a series of questions.
Can I have one too?
Oh, sure. Coming right over.
I'm a faculty member.
So this is a very basic collection of questions. However, many people, when they're approaching proposal writing or concept paper development, if you see a blank page, it can be a little scary. How do I express what I want to do? What kind of information are they looking for? I took a look at the program website. There's a whole host of specific guidelines and questions, and I don't really know about how to go about organizing my thoughts right away. So this is just a very basic way of thinking things through. The number one question I ask is, what is the purpose of the project? And this applies to anything from the hardcore scientific research all the way down to humanities-focused work. So really, why are you doing this work? Why are you proposing this line of research? What are the implications? What are the potential impacts of your work? What needs will the project fulfill, and why are they significant? So how is your program unique or different? What need have you seen in the community if it's a community benefit program? What other lines of research are you building upon, and why? What are the project-specific goals and objectives? So many funders want to see that crystal clear in a cogent proposal. What are you proposing to do? And in the specific way of saying, these are my goals and these are my objectives. Whereas goals are the overall aim, and the objectives are really specific strategies that will get you there. What activities will be conducted as part of your project, so whether or not that involves scientific research or if it's more on the programmatic side, what will you specifically do? So outlining those activities. What methods will you use for implementing your project? The target population, of course, very important. So thinking, and also this can be a challenge for people as well, thinking beyond perhaps if you're working in the higher education sphere and ultimately you think the target population is students, does it extend past that into the local community? Is that something that you can include to make it a bigger impact for a potential foundation funder? On the research side, how many individuals will you study? And on the programmatic side, how many individuals will you serve? So many foundations and even corporate philanthropies want to know specifically how many people you will touch in this project. What's your timeline for accomplishing the project and its objectives? So thinking it through in terms of, okay, here's my timeline, here's the target dates for achieving specific outcomes, and accomplishing certain programmatic initiatives and completing certain activities. Where will your project's activities take place? Is it purely on campus? Will you need a community partner to reach certain populations? That's just thinking programmatically. What personnel will be involved in the project? And what roles and responsibilities will they have? Are you doing this just as a PI project? It's just your research? Will you have a co-PI? Will you have a research assistant working with you? Will you have a subcontract to another faculty member at a different organization? Will you have a community partner? Then the budget questions. So when I started the presentation, I didn't give you some background about myself. I have my MBA actually from the Stillman School of Business, so whereas my undergraduate degree is in the academic study of religion from Dartmouth, I'm a humanities person, but I'm also a business person. I've learned to love budgets, so I'm here to help you. Rely on me if budgets are not your strong point. I have a number of different budget templates that I use, and I've been doing this work for 17 years now, and I'm pretty good at plugging in different things based on what you're proposing into a budget format that makes sense for funders. As Nick had mentioned in his presentation as well, will this require institutional commitment? Is there an in-kind contribution? Foundations in particular are looking for some sort of institutional commitment to show that the institution values the work being done, specifically if it's a programmatic proposal. So making sure that you've gone through the appropriate approvals and also the resource gathering, just talking to people about the importance of your project and what it means for the university, what it means for the community, and just being able to advocate for it is important. And I'm happy to do that on my side as well when it comes to foundation opportunities. So thinking through as well on the flip side of the paper, item 12, what other departments or agencies will serve as collaborators? Are you working just in your own department? Are you working across the university? Who can you engage to help support your program? Is it interdisciplinary research? Do you need a community organization partner? Number 13, incredibly important, the intended measurable outcomes or impact of the project. So a lot of funders are looking for quantitative and qualitative outcomes. How will you, and you need to be able to, in a progress report, demonstrate how you've been successful in what you've proposed to do. So you need something that's measurable. I'm also here to help you in terms of developing goals that are smart, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, and that's the measures by which foundations will often judge your work. And then thinking through evaluation. So including specific indicators that you can use as benchmarks for the success. So if you're looking at specific survey instruments, or if you're looking at different timeline-oriented measures, achievement, just being able to track that so you can effectively report back is essential. Thinking through how your project will be innovative and unique. How do you differentiate from other similar programs or research being conducted in the nationally or in the geographic area? So that's something when I meet with faculty members, I will ask them to explore, and I'm on your side. I'm just trying to help you clarify and refine your ideas. It's not a challenge to what you're proposing to do, but doing on the business side and on the funding side, since it's a competitive universe, you want to make sure that what you're proposing is unique, differentiates, and is going to be competitive with the funder. So I'm here to help you get there. You should be able to identify why your team is uniquely suited to carry out the proposed activities. So looking at doing some brief bios that can be included. It can be modeled on BioSketch or just a brief bio that you might have on your website. So why do you add value to this work? How, as well, will you disseminate the project's results and findings to other organizations? Is this something that ultimately you'd like to replicate, scale up on the programmatic side, or on the science side, or on the research side? What vehicles are you really looking to publish your work in, and what's the implication for the field? The final question is also incredibly important, mostly to foundation funders. So grants are often awarded for a limited period of time. So some of the funders that are funding your research or funding your programmatic initiatives will do so for maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years. How are you going to sustain this work for the long term? On the programmatic side, you don't want to necessarily create something that will benefit the community or benefit the university that will go away once the grant funding dries up. And you don't necessarily want to just hopscotch from one funder to the next. You should be able to think through how you're going to sustain the effort, or if it will become institutionalized, and have a good plan for doing so. And a lot of funders will ask for that, and I'm here to help you think it through as well. On the sustaining side as well, if you're thinking about foundation funding as a way of getting some seed funding or support for a pilot project, then you would use to go for a larger federal opportunity. That's something that foundation funders like to see too. So if you're testing an idea, building the evidence base, making a case for a larger application, that's a strong approach as well. So that was the lightning round. And if anyone has any questions, I know we're just at time. I'm happy to answer questions.
If I could just piggyback on what the last thing she said, Lily said, is that's actually a fantastic idea. Just, to look at corporate as a step to the government funding entity of it, because that way it'll also, if it passes foundation, not the little foundation, but if at least it passes one agency or one type of funding path, they'll give you a shot for the federal side, which is a lot more strict in terms of how they give out money and how they handle certain things. So that was actually a perfect leeway to that. So.
Questions, comments? All ready to go out and start thinking about some ideas and try to get some money. It's going to get I'm going to give a sneaky one for some of my faculty colleagues. Tracy might appreciate, and Mary might appreciate this one especially.